You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Most writers and radio show hosts know that to connect with your fans, you need to do more than just write books or record the latest podcasts. There are many different elements that go into forming an online platform, but there are also many hidden traps. To make matters worse, solid advice on how to survive the muddy waters is scarce. In the book Hidden Traps, I talk about some of the important issues of working with an online platform, highlighting traps that could put your physical or internet security at risk, or be harmful to your reputation. Are your social media posts just links with a few disjointed words, making you look like someone who can't complete a sentence? Did your new website cost you more than you anticipated? Are you leaking your personal contact details across the web without even knowing it? Then you need Hidden Traps. Hidden Traps is now available in paperback and ebook from a variety of retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kobo. Visit blackwolfpublications.com for more details.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687. 687.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Everyone loves liberty. Our rights come from God, not the government. So why are you letting other people tell you what's best for your health care? Exercise your freedom with Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is a community of people who voluntarily share one another's medical costs. Liberty Health Share is founded on the idea that most people truly want to help one another. Healthcare sharing allows members to do just that as a true community that supports one another in times of need. Liberty believes people should make decisions for themselves and their families. Members are able to take back the freedom to make their own decisions about their health care. Freedom from guilt or doubt about how your money is used. You have the freedom to direct your health care, not to be dictated to by bureaucrats. Stop letting others tell you what to do and join a community of like-minded people. Exercise your freedom. Join Liberty Health Share and take back the control of your health care while helping those around you. Call Liberty at 855-58-LIBERTY. Again, that's 855-58-LIBERTY for more information, or you can check them out at libertyhealthshare.org. Again, that's libertyhealthshare.org.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is. If getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now. 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
At St. Jude, a family never sees a bill at all. It's like the world has been lifted off of your shoulders.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Sometimes writers feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
This is Dawn on the Air. It's a look at today's news and social commentary from an eyes-wide-open perspective. It's up to us to ensure the issues of today are decided by us, not for us, because no one will give us liberty. We must claim it for ourselves. Well, tomorrow is Halloween. You know, I've always loved celebrating Halloween. I love everything about it. From the costumes and the candy to the parties and the supernatural imagery. But you probably wouldn't know it today. These days, we occasionally have a jack-o'-lantern outside, and we always dress the kids up and take them out trick-or-treating. But I personally haven't properly celebrated Halloween in decades. And I'm Don Weston, and this is Dawn on the Air. I find I make excuses for not participating in Halloween. I'm too old, it's too expensive, it's just too time-consuming. Outside of the kids, my wife was never really into it. So I don't know, I guess it's just priorities. And the rest is, I guess I just lost that zeal somewhere along the way. It's odd, a lot of things seemed easier back in the day. I used to wear my biker jacket every time I left the house. Now I can only wear it for a few weeks that we have a fall season and maybe the first few weeks of winter. Of course, I used to run around at night all the time, and that's the difference in priorities. It's similar to how children find it much easier to be happy and carefree than adults. It's all in the priorities. And folks often talk about Halloween itself around Halloween time, but I wanted to do something a little different. I thought maybe I'd discuss 1990s vampire culture. I just wasn't sure there was any real relevance to the world of today. But then, of course, I stopped and I looked around with eyes wide open. And, well, I suppose there is relevance after all. You see, there's relevance insofar as people, they used to pretend that they were vampires. And today, we have people pretending to be all kinds of things, like Jedi, lizard men, varying genders, and even no gender at all. It's also relevant in the sense that people today openly mutilate themselves for a variety of reasons, from vanity to psychology. Not that any of this began recently. Scarring and tattooing have existed since before recorded history. There's no secret some cultures crush feet, elongate necks, and perform all manner of self-inflicted deformities to uphold some sort of tradition. People have been cutting themselves to release tension at least since the 80s, probably longer. I guess the difference is that I was immersed in some of this vampire culture, and as I look back on that lifestyle and compare it to many of the societal shifts I see today, I can't help but think there's a correlation somewhere. Now, of course, a correlation doesn't automatically indicate causation. In other words, just because two events may be related, that doesn't mean that one caused the other. But it seems as though there's a correlation between the varying degrees of vampire culture and the culture of make-believe we see today. In order to illustrate my point, let me explain what I mean by vampire culture. Vampire culture, to me, describes human beings literally pretending to be vampires. From dress and mannerisms to actually cutting one another open and ingesting their blood. Some folks went so far as to have professional fang dentures created, or to have dentists cap their teeth, or even file them down into fangs. Those were the more extreme examples, of course. To most participants, vampire culture was just an excuse to express or give in to their most basic hedonistic impulses. That's right. In large part, it was about the sex. Or if not the sex directly, it was the hypersexuality involved with vampire culture. It was provocative. It was also about being cool. It was about fitting in. It was kind of like feeling like you were a part of something. Many people who truly embrace counterculture movements, like vampire culture, just feel rejected by society. And there was a significant psychological draw to vampire culture. Joel Schumacher seriously set the bar in 1987 with the tagline for his timeless classic, The Lost Boys. Some of you may remember. It went something like, "Sleep all day, party all night, never grow old, never die. It's fun to be a vampire." Now, I'm sure at some point in the last few minutes, some of you are probably thinking, freaking weirdos. Well, keep in mind, there are always reasons people act the way they do. I've known plenty of people who live outside the norm. I did. In fact, I still do. As a white Christian male, I feel more like a freak today than I ever did with the leather, spikes, and dyed mohawk. So I recommend going easy on people who are different. You have no idea what they've gone through to get where they are. And of course, the tide always turns. Always. You could be pointing and laughing one moment, and suddenly find yourself next, under the microscope. But it's okay. Even I thought my more hardcore vampire culture friends were absolutely crazy. I still do. And most of them would have happily agreed with me. Do you have any idea what ingesting blood could do to you? Look it up. Never mind the obvious risks of disease. People, they actually filed their teeth into fangs. Yeah, these people are nuts. When I look at the people playing make-believe today, I find striking similarities. Since it's so prevalent, I'll use the gender example. Now, I spoke on this a couple of weeks ago regarding gender-confused school children. Now, I really have no problem with adults being who they say they are, so long as they're not infringing on the rights of others. That's why I have a problem with the idea of forced acceptance. The fact is, I have about as much respect for transgenders as I do any other human being. Sorry I'm not sorry, I see no reason to give you special treatment, no matter how entitled to it you may think you are. Equality, it really is nice, isn't it? But equality also means you get equally scrutinized. That's equal treatment, so enjoy it. Now that that's out of the way, there are varying degrees of vampire culture, and there are varying degrees of transgenderism. In both, there are people who just pay lip service to it. There are people who are curious about it, people who are experimenting with it, people who indulge now and then. And then there are the people who fully commit, going so far as to mutilate themselves to meet their imagined image. Yeah, just like the people who filed their teeth down into fangs and ingested the blood of others. It's crazy. Now, it's okay. Don't be triggered. Mascara runs. All I'm saying is, the people that I know who went full tilt on vampire culture were in it to win it. To them, in their minds, they were 100% vampire. Now, not to stray, but realize it wasn't all about a role-playing game either. White Wolf Publishing's Vampire the Masquerade. It was a tremendous hit, and it succeeded in bridging the gap between what was traditionally a nerdy niche game style with a sense of coolness and sensuality. People from all walks of life embraced the concepts of this game, and still do. But now I mention it because this one guy I knew, he was just breaking into this vampire culture, and so I decided to loan him my Vampire the Masquerade rulebook. Now, he took it home, and about a week later, he returned with this weird, fire behind his eyes. Perhaps fervor is a better word. But still, he held the book out to me in both hands, wide-eyed, and with great sincerity, he said, "Thank you, Don. Thank you for this gift." And, I accepted the book, and he walked away, and I turned around and was like, what the just happened? So like I said, to these folks, they were and probably still are 100% vampire. To a transgender, they are 100% whatever it is they claim to be. Where's the difference? Why would one be crazy and not the other? Yes, my friends, you are nuts. And that's not a big deal. I don't even care, remember? We're all a little crazy sometimes. Just don't infringe on the rights of others. Don't force it on me. Keep your crazy to yourself. I do, most of the time. Wait. Sorry. My neighbor just texted me. Vampires suck. That explains your show. I know he's just messing with me, and you can too if you follow me on Twitter at DonOnTheAir. Jerk. All right, well, now speaking of restraining my crazy, I admit to being immersed in vampire culture, but I wasn't necessarily an active participant. That just wasn't my lifestyle. If I were to look at it through the horror vernacular, I would associate myself far more with a werewolf than vampires. You know, if I was ever considered goth, I was an angry goth. More like I was punk rock, teenage angst on overdrive. A counterculture warrior of sorts. But unlike most people I knew back then, I was often an active participant in society. Yeah, even amongst the black sheep, I was a black sheep. I was one of the few people I knew who actually held and kept a job. I've always been a serial monogamist. Attempts to deviate from that or to be too casual have all ended poorly for me. I was always politically minded and at times tried to rally for one cause or another. Most of the people I knew shunned every aspect of society, slept around and shared each other, and couldn't give a damn about the world outside their own bubble. The point is, I cut my mohawk a certain way so I could conform it when necessary, and I had tattoos and such in less conspicuous locations. All because I knew, while I railed against society, I still had to function within it. There were plenty of times I had to suppress who I felt I was in order to masquerade as a normal, functioning member of society, and I didn't mind, because it made sense. But that's why I identified far more easily with the concept of a werewolf than a vampire. I was accustomed to suppressing my inner self to coexist in society. These days, I let the beast out in measured amounts and in more focused ways, like bringing you, Don, on the air. This show is often an expression of my inner rage, just focused and very measured. Now, did I have to identify with a legendary creature? No, but it was fun. Besides, we didn't have smartphones to keep us zombified back then. We had to associate ourselves with the supernatural, all on our own. Oh, hold on. Oh, now he says, a werewolf, huh? That explains the fleas. All right, then. Apparently someone forgot it's almost Halloween. Don't eggs and toilet paper go on sale right about now? I guess I'll go find out. Well, my neighbor, he isn't the only windbag around. Adam Conover on True TV's Adam Ruins Everything, he goes a bit far sometimes too. Now, I like his show. He basically debunks what people believe to be factual that really isn't. Like when he eviscerated the eHarmony guy in the dating episode, or exposing how dog breeds are unnatural, genetically manipulated hybrids. I mean, surely that would tick off a few of my listeners, but hey, we recently had to put down our black lab with severe hip dysplasia. Black labs have that because of inbreeding. But when the show discusses political issues, the liberal bias is unmistakable. For instance, he presented immigration with only half of the truth. They mentioned all these various issues with walls and deportations and the like, and most of which was true, as I know it. But they conveniently leave out the criminality involved, the stolen identities, the impact on our healthcare and educational systems. It was simply a one-sided presentation. But when the host is named Conover, what do you expect, right? After a few political shows, I just stopped watching. I happened to catch the episode last Tuesday because, the TV was on. I was writing and I happened to look up. And it was the Halloween episode, so yeah, I decided to watch it. And it was a little disturbing. I knew I'd have to mention something about it. You see, in this segment about the potential danger for people contaminating Halloween candy, Conover merrily reports,
there has never been a single documented report found of a stranger seriously harming a child by poisoning their Halloween candy.
Well, that's good news. Poisoning, however, is usually a minor concern and doesn't include people jamming foreign objects into the candy. But then Conover has Joel Best on, who's a professor at the University of Delaware, and he's apparently been researching the tampered candy phenomenon for 30 years. He claims,
the tampered candy story has no basis in fact. 2 separate reports looked into claims of tampered candy and concluded that virtually all of them were hoaxes.
Again, with the choice of words. Virtually all were hoaxes? That means they weren't all hoaxes.
And if a child were killed this way, it would be a major news story. Yet I've never found any evidence of such a story being covered by major media.
Now sure, it would be a major news story if a child were killed by tampered candy. Probably even if a child was injured. Assuming, of course, it was ever reported. You know, it's possible that atrocities occur every day in America that go unnoticed or underreported. Not only that, but isn't it possible that no one has been killed because parents are vigilant? Even if every report was a hoax, which he admitted they weren't, tampering with candy is an obvious way to spread fear throughout communities and damage morale. In this age of terrorism, it only takes one time, one incident, one lapse of caution, and your world is irreparably damaged. Now, I agree, it's not a widespread issue, and it's probably an extremely rare issue, but then again, so are bombings. And even though virtually every unattended backpack is harmless, I'm still going to use caution if I see one, and probably call law enforcement to check it out. As a responsible parent, I'm constantly balancing freedom and security. My kids have to live their lives, but I have to be sure they have a life to live. I'm going to continue to have my children break their candy bars in half before biting into them. It's not panic. It's a perfectly reasonable precaution. I'm not going to let some dude named Conover convince me to let my guard down and when I've only got one shot at keeping my kids alive. I'm sure someone out there will think, well, Adam said it's okay and he's on True TV, so it must be true. Yeah, well, I love the Carbonaro Effect. That's a hidden camera magic TV show, also on True TV. Michael Carbonaro lies constantly on that show. So no, not everything on True TV is true. Don't let TV dictate how you live your life or how you choose to protect your children. Use your own judgment. And with that, I guess I'm going to take a short break. Maybe check a few of the candy bars we bought from the store. Of course, if I break them open, I can't actually give them out to children. And, you know, I don't want them to go to waste. I mean, starving China kids and all. So I guess I'll just have to take, 6 or 7 for the team. Hey, it's all a part of good parenting. But stick around because I'm going to hit a topic that has some recent news attention. And it just happens to be, one of the more horrific aspects of our society. A real American horror story, you could say. When Don on the Air returns in just a moment. This is a Federalist Moment with Don Weston, brought to you by the Federalist Coalition. Both the 5th and 14th Amendments refer to the fact that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Even in the 1700s, the term people referred to human beings, and the last time I checked, that's still the leading definition. The 14th even differentiates between a citizen and a person. Now, it is what it is, and if you don't like it, just get 38 state legislators to agree with you and define it in a new amendment. But until then, the 4th and 5th Amendments apply to everyone equally. We can no more detain an illegal immigrant without a warrant for an unlimited amount of time than we could a citizen, because to do so deprives that person of liberty and possibly even life without due process of law. Let's also remember that our 4th and 5th Amendments detail unalienable rights. They are endowed to everyone equally, and they can neither be given nor taken away without due process of law. That means someone must have gone through the court process to have their rights suspended as a consequence of their actions. It is illegal for our government or any government official to deprive anyone of their unalienable rights without due process of law. It is imperative that we remember the Constitution does not grant us rights. We're granted our unalienable rights, as outlined in the Bill of Rights, by our very existence. The Constitution, it exists to define the responsibilities and the limitations of our governments. The Fourth and Fifth and even Eighth Amendments are pivotal in protecting us from our government. Without them, we can be locked away indefinitely or have our assets seized all on a whim. The government could effectively justify any action taken against anyone they wished. Now imagine if the government whittled down the impact of these protective laws by excluding certain classes of people. The government would love that type of power, to pick and choose which rights apply to who. After all, it's more difficult to redefine a right than it is to redefine or expand a classification. We, the American people, must reject laws that violate our Constitution. What's good for one class of people will certainly be good for any other class once the need arises. We must be our own watchdogs. Expecting the government to watch out for us is like expecting the foxes to guard the henhouse. The government wants all of the power. The Constitution protects us from them, but only if we enforce it. Remember, we hold all the power, and we exercise that power with our voices and our votes. Use them both with purpose. Now you can discover more truths about federalism at thefederalistcoalition.org. This is Don on the Air. I don't take a lot of breaks or run a show for multiple hours just yet, so I'm limited in the number of opportunities I have for bumper music. I'm not a fan of the more traditional Halloween songs. Yeah, Monster Mash was cool when I was young and hadn't heard it 1,000 times before. Sometimes people just play it because it's expected, even when no one likes it. I guess maybe that's why it's a graveyard smash. I don't know. But I do know this is Don on the Air. If you're a Monster Mash fanboy or ghoul, you can feel free to bury me on Twitter at Don on the Air or by email, donontheair@klrnradio.com. Let me know just how wrong I am. But in the meantime, it looks like abortion hit the news again over the past month. I haven't neglected it. I've just been awaiting the inevitable outcome, which, we finally got last Wednesday when she was allowed to end the life of her fetus. You've probably heard about this illegal immigrant, pardon my political incorrectness, the undocumented teenager who happened to come here illegally, the one people have been calling Jane Doe. Now, I find hiding her name to be completely disingenuous. I do understand that she's a minor. She was also old enough to choose to end a life, so she's old enough to be accountable for it. Not that I think she should be personally tormented, but calling this apparently grown woman Jane Doe seems more like a political move. She's Jane Doe because she could be anyone. Yeah, that sort of propaganda. Sadly, that was far from the only propaganda being shuffled around. This was, yet again, another major distraction, and of course, most people fell for it. You see, the crux of the debate was that she's legally a minor. She crossed the border without a parent or guardian and has been living in a shelter since being detained. Minors typically aren't allowed to have abortions without a parent or guardian's consent, yet she obtained a judge's order allowing her to undergo the procedure. At this point, unless the government suddenly decided out of the blue to start supporting and defending the Constitution by tossing out Roe versus Wade, there wasn't anything else that could be done. No, instead, the Trump administration decided to violate the Constitution by insisting it doesn't apply to undocumented people who happen to come here illegally. Whew, that's a mouthful. Illegal immigrant used to be so much easier to say. Anyway, the government violated the Constitution, again, without penalty, I might add, by asserting the Constitution doesn't apply to undocumented persons who came here illegally. That's what the hubbub was about, and it's why it's a huge waste of time. What's sad to me is people have no problem asserting that the 14th Amendment grants undocumented people who happen to come here illegally constitutional rights. By my estimation, they're correct. The rub, however, is that the same argument applies to underdeveloped humans. Yeah, if I must call illegal immigrants undocumented persons who happen to come here illegally, you bet fetuses are just underdeveloped humans. And the fact is, the 14th Amendment protects them both for the exact same reason. A reason we'll get to here in just a moment. The real issue to me begins with the fact that this girl is 17. That's the legal age of consent in some states, including Texas. Personally, I'd prefer children wait until their brains have fully developed before being allowed to make life-altering decisions like when to have sex, but that's not up to me. The legal age of becoming an adult in Texas is 18. How can a child be sufficiently mature to grant consent to engage in sexual activity, yet not have the maturity to, sign a legal document? It's hard to reconcile. Creating and ending life comes before the privilege of voting? Yeah, you have to be 18 to legally vote, but you can legally have sex, create life, and even end life as early as 14. A person's brain doesn't finish developing until, 23 or so? How in the world does any of this make sense? Good grief. But the news cycle, it doesn't really have anything to do with my discussion of abortion tonight. I decided I wanted to speak about, the most horrifically barbaric practice still considered legal in America. I mean, it is the Halloween show. This occasion calls for horror. So yeah, abortion was the obvious choice. Now look, if you don't find abortion horrific, you need to see a few pictures or watch a video or two. An abundance of this imagery is what prompted me to block automatically viewing photos and videos on Twitter. And it certainly is a constitutional federalist issue. The 14th Amendment protects life. On the matter, it says, "Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws." Remember, life is a natural right. The controversy comes when people attempt to justify their desires to end life by redefining what life actually is. The controversy should be that this form of birth control was first industrialized in an effort to curtail the black, poor, and uneducated populations. Margaret Sanger, notorious founder of Planned Parenthood, opened clinics in impoverished neighborhoods in order to rid the world of children she considered born of ignorance or accident, in order to build a foundation for a new race. Those were her words, not mine. But remember, the 14th Amendment reinforces our natural right to life by declaring our government may not deprive any person of life without due process of law. It goes on to reinforce this idea by stating the government may not deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protections of the law. Okay, words, they have meaning, right? I mean, that's how spoken and written communication work. So let's look at a few words. People like to challenge the term person in the 14th Amendment. Okay, a person is defined as a human being. Okay, well, a human being is defined as a man, woman, or child of the species Homo sapiens. Okay, a child is defined as a young human below the age of puberty. Well, if you're a human and you've created life, then that life is defined as also being human, right? Human females, they don't become impregnated with dogs or cats or any other species. only humans. So pregnant women have humans growing inside of them. There's no limitation on the definition of person that it must be a fully developed human. It only says a human being. I mean, it feels like I'm being condescending when I have to explain all of this on such a basic level. That's an indication that, the arguments I'm countering are a bit of a reach. Technically, abortion shouldn't even be legal. There is no provision in the Constitution that allows for the government to approve the elimination of natural rights without due process of law. The Supreme Court, in all of its supreme wisdom, is not granted permission by the Constitution to ignore the Constitution. It really is that simple. And folks like Seth Rogen, they post ignorant messages about how absurd it is to think people would use abortion as birth control. Look, I may be for the legalization of marijuana, as in it's not the federal government's authority per Article 1, Section 8 to criminalize it in the first place. But bro, you gotta put the pipe down once in a while and take a look at the world with eyes wide open. Yes, there certainly are women who literally use abortion as birth control. It's not hyperbole to say so, it's simplifying. Now, an expanded explanation would be there are women who continuously engage in unprotected activity, become pregnant, have an abortion, then rinse and repeat. It happens. Granted, the women who use it as a form of birth control probably shouldn't be having kids in the first place, but abortions are not the way to go. Sterilization, perhaps. Hey, don't look at me that way. I warned you guys long ago. I have personal views and I have big picture views. While I most often express my big picture views, I never said I wouldn't slip in something on the side from time to time. I'm just saying, women who routinely have abortions obviously have no respect for life. But hey, keep in mind, we're talking about someone having the choice to end someone else's life. It's an uncomfortable subject that deserves uncomfortable discussion. I have a healthy respect for life. Now, we can pretend there are different benchmarks that must be met to qualify as a human life form, but they're all irrelevant justifications. You heard me right. You're justifying whatever level of, life ending you're comfortable with. It's not a life until it's born, some will say. Others, it must have a fully functioning brain. I think, therefore I is. It's nonsense. Some even go hardcore in the other direction. Life begins the instant that little swimmer breaks on through to the other side. Look, I don't know. I have my own level of comfortability, but, I tend to base mine on both science and faith. I like the heartbeat. Life requires a circulatory system, so without a heart, there can't be life. I believe from the moment of conception until that first heartbeat, there's a potential for life. But until that engine turns over, we're not quite there yet. Now, once the heart starts pumping blood, that's a different story. And for those who like to quote scripture, reconcile Leviticus 17:14. Because the life of every creature is its blood. I'm just saying, once again, life can be simple. We're the ones who make it difficult. Now, just to be clear, I do condemn abortion. Not every abortion, but the abortions, I could accept are medically necessary, rape-related, and that sort of thing. Sadly, people tend to lump these situations in with the more common, everyday abortions. Abortion on demand. I find it to be a wholly unconstitutional and immoral practice. So yeah, I oppose it, and those who push to keep it legal. What I strongly disagree with, however, is victimizing the women who have abortions. We already know there are women who do, in fact, use abortions as birth control. We know there are women out there who just don't care. Let me ask you, if these women don't care that they ended a life, what makes you think screaming "baby killer" at her is gonna make any difference? She already does not care. But I'm not even talking about those women. I'm talking about all the others. Somewhere out there right now is a young woman trying to work through all of this. And you know what she's getting? She's getting a bunch of nonsense. She's probably desperate and confused, and on one side, she's getting people offering her choices, and on the other, she's getting people screaming "baby killer" at her. Now, which approach do you think she's going to find more appealing? I mean, I want to go ballistic whenever I see some piece of garbage with a bumper sticker, "Abortion is murder," or "If you had an abortion, you're a baby killer." I mean, are you out of your damned mind? Let's look at this with eyes wide open, okay? I'm not a woman, but I can imagine how emotionally scarring an abortion on demand can be for most women. It's probably something that gets in your head and eats away at your soul. Maybe you go to bed crying at night, and maybe it gives you nightmares. Maybe it makes you more prone to drug and alcohol abuse, and maybe it leaves you suicidal. Regardless of the impact, it's something that's already happened. No one can take it back. But it's also something we don't want to happen again. So try to imagine having experienced all of this, maybe continuously experiencing it, and then while you drag yourself out of your home, maybe going to work, just trying to squeeze out some kind of a living in this savage world of ours, and then all of a sudden you get a kick in the head from some ignorant jackass who thinks it somehow prevents abortion by destroying the women who've had them. If you truly want to help these women, and yes, I'm looking at you, my brothers and sisters in Christ, if you really want to help these women, you need to be more inviting, more loving, more caring than the people who seek to exploit their perilous situations by providing abortions in the first place. There is nothing at all loving or caring, or even Christian for that matter, about taunting, harassing, and torturing these women. There is nothing you can do or say that is worse than what they've already done to themselves. The women who don't feel it like that won't care about your opinion anyway. Think about it. What would Jesus do? According to the Bible, Jesus would welcome these women. Remember, he intentionally surrounded himself with the most sinful because he believed they were the ones who needed him the most. Oh, wow. I'm really feeling the pull to talk about faith. I've been meaning to do it. Well, I felt a calling to speak about God since around 1999 or so. I've resisted it with all my might for a variety of reasons I'm sure I'll get into someday soon. I was just thinking maybe closer to Christmas, but it may be a lot sooner. There's just too much hatred in this world to keep putting it off. Anyway, this is the reason I've toned down my own rhetoric a bit. I mean, at least, I try to use more appropriate wording. People may accuse me of being politically correct. Well, obviously, those people don't listen to my show or weren't listening a few minutes ago when I said sterilizing people who repeatedly have abortions on demand should be open for discussion. There's practically nothing politically correct about me. Avoiding the use of certain intentionally provocative and hurtful terms like murder and baby killer isn't about being politically correct. It's not about diminishing the impact of abortion, and it's not about looking good in front of other people. It's about actually trying to get through to these women before their abortion, or supporting these women back into a healthy state of mind afterward. If you stop and really think about it for a moment, you'll realize helping these women back into a healthy mental state also helps these women become more hopeful, more stable. Maybe they become less prone to choose abortion on demand the next time it comes up. It's about being sensitive to someone who's either considering or has gone through a horrific ordeal and trying to actually help them, not control them, but help them. That's why we lose the battle against abortion. It's our approach. The defenders of abortion on demand say we're taking away a woman's choice. In the land of the free, that's a serious argument. Look, people believe what they see right in front of them quicker and easier than they perceive possibilities. A pregnant woman in an impossible seeming situation is easier to focus on than the underdeveloped human we can't see. We don't defeat abortion on demand with force. We defeat abortion on demand by offering better choices than the abortionists offer. How do we do that? I don't know. Let's open some discussions about it, though. Rather than condemning the women who have abortions, let's work on offering better solutions. That way, we can help save those who are savable. Maybe over time, we swing the tide of public opinion and then eventually the legal system, and finally, the government. You know, as a true Federalist, a constitutional Federalist, I suggest we approach this problem the same way we should approach most problems. We must convince the citizenry first. The politicians are secondary. Their efforts are supposed to represent the will of the people. So let's change the will of the people and let them change the politicians. Sometimes we go so far to prove a point that we cross the line our point was trying to make in the first place. Man, I tell you, I dislike how the Jane Doe story ended, but I'm thankful for the story. It serves as an excellent example of both sides manipulating the Constitution to serve their own agenda. I'm disgusted with everyone, to be quite honest. Republicans twisting the Constitution so it doesn't apply to immigrants, Democrats twisting the Constitution so it doesn't apply to underdeveloped humans. And the irony is, they both use the same passage to justify their side when in fact, that passage justifies them both. This is why we need to promote our constitutional federalism. People they just don't understand how it works. And it's a shame, because when the Constitution is allowed to work as intended, the true balance of power we need for this country to function, to truly support liberty, actually exists. When we deny the Constitution, we deny our own liberty. Again, it really is that simple. Speaking of simple, I'm going to be simply out of time soon. So I'm going to take a break and see what time I have left. And I'm sure I'll have something for you when Don on the Air returns in just a moment.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, Internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
This is Don on the Air.
Can't seem to face up to the facts. I'm tense and nervous and I can't relax. Can't sleep 'cause my bed's on fire. Don't touch me, I'm a real live wire. Psycho killer, qu'est-ce que c'est? Better run, 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 run away.
Yeah, so my wife decided to try something new for my birthday this year. And I was thankful, to be honest. I mean, at some point, birthdays, they just become another reminder, along with all the aches and pains, that I'm just one step closer to the grave. So it's nice when we actually do something different. And this year, she decided to take us all to Walker Stalker Con. Now, that's a convention that's supposed to cater to the horror genre as it relates to television, movies, and books. But if that's the case, I'm not exactly sure why Sons of Anarchy were there, but it was a good show. And speaking of good shows, welcome back to Don on the Air. You know, growing up, my parents would take me to the video store and let me pick out a movie or two to rent for the weekend. My first stop was always the horror section. Back then, they would either make me uneasy or scare me or just make me laugh, and sometimes all three. These days, most horror is so bland, I could almost let my preteen watch it. I mean, not quite, but, you know, it's getting there. Anyway, I dig me some horror, so I was excited to go. And go we did, to Walker Stalker Con, and I have to tell you, it was a great experience. Now, before I begin, those veterans of modern-day conventions will probably just make fun of me because, you know, the first thing I noticed was this wasn't really like the conventions I was used to going to. I was used to the early 1990s Dragon Con or Star Trek conventions, you know, where there were a lot of events and games and contests and parties. The major draw of Walker Stalker Con was the celebrity autograph booths, the photo ops, and the vendors. Now, there were a few celebrity discussion panels, but they were spread throughout the weekend and in the convention center, so they were kind of hard to get back and forth to in time. We saw the first panel with Chandler Riggs and Caitlin Nakin, which was really interesting, by the way. But then, we spent nearly an hour waiting in line just to enter the main floor. The convention's only open for general admission folks for about 8.5 hours, and when you sometimes spend hours waiting in line, the rest of your hours vanish quickly. So, yeah, we missed most of the other panels. Now, it's clear these conventions are set up to encourage a 3-day pass. If you prepay for only 1 or 2 days, you're really shooting in the dark. They don't even release the schedule for autograph booths or panels and such until, a couple of days before the event. Now, my wife, she bought our tickets a month or so in advance, and we just went on Saturday, and most of the panels I'd have wanted to see were on Friday or Sunday. I guess it worked out in a way. While we didn't see many panels, I did have time to visit a couple of my favorite actors, and it only took about an hour and a half between them. I was really looking forward to meeting Michael Rooker. He played Merle on The Walking Dead, but I've enjoyed his work for decades. He's a highly skilled and versatile character actor. He's got that blocky, tough guy look that's had him playing everything from cops and feds to a NASCAR driver and even Yondu in Guardians of the Galaxy. But to me, he's most famous for his villainous, sociopath, and murderous roles. I love me some villains. But Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, that's still among one of my favorite horror films. His portrayal of Henry Lee Lucas was bone-chilling. At least back in '86 it was. Now, while this was praise that I'm sure he's heard 1,000 times before, I just couldn't help but heap it on him when I met him. He was a very cool guy, easy to talk with. I asked him about filming Henry and whether it was true that he stayed in character the whole time throughout filming. He explained that, given the subject matter, it was a difficult role, and slipping in and out of character just wasn't easy to do. Still, he spent his evenings trying as best he could to shed his role and then build it back up in the morning before interacting with the crew. That's the likely cause for the rumors that he stayed in character the whole time. Folks just rarely saw him out of character during the shoot. He has an amazing resume, and he's just a really cool guy. He signed an autograph for me, and then he even signed my son's arm. That was cool. I'll tweet that picture out here in just a minute. But I also got to see Bruce Campbell. His line was longer, but worth it. I tweeted out a picture of a guy who was dressed as Ash from Evil Dead 2. He looked really great. I'll retweet that one again. @DonOnTheAir on Twitter. Here in just a sec. I kind of feel as though Bruce Campbell needs no introduction, but, he's also one of those great character actors. His physical comedy was intense in Evil Dead 2, and that astounded me. It still does, really. Most of his television shows were campy and never that successful, which is a shame. It just seems that the masses just don't get that style of entertainment. Still, he found success again as Sam Axe on Burn Notice and is now running a successful series, Ash vs. the Evil Dead. Anyway, Bruce Campbell was cool. I didn't have anything specific to ask him, and he ended up telling me that he has a brother named Don. He said he calls him Dumbbell Don. And that was funny because my wife thought it was funny. Maybe a little too funny. But anyway, I love the work of both of these guys, since my early teens, so it was really cool to finally meet them. It was also expensive. It was like $100 between them. And thank goodness their lines weren't ridiculous for us. Though it was funny, Bruce Campbell's handler, he was thoughtful and asked my youngest son, who was sitting on the floor, if he'd like to jump to the front of the line. That probably saved us another 20 minutes or so. Don't get me wrong, I went in expecting to stand in lines. When I come prepared for something like that, I'm all in for it. Standing in lines is even less of a big deal these days when we have smartphones and tablets and whatnot. We brought snacks and water, and, with my wife, I could alternate going to the restroom and watching our youngest, so it really wasn't a big deal. And, we kind of got off easy because I was more interested in meeting guys like, Rooker and Campbell as opposed to Norman Reedus and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. You had to pre-purchase anything with those guys far in advance. Plus, you were paying top dollar and still waiting in line for hours upon hours on top of the prepaid tickets. I mean, I met one lady who had a poster she's taken to Walker Stalker Con for years, still trying to collect all the cast signatures on it. I mean, man, that's a lot of money and a lot of time when you really think about it. I do realize it's kind of funny when I comment on how cool the guests are at these conventions. I mean, I imagine they would be. Some of them can bank upwards of, $200,000 from an event like this. I mean, they can all wrangle an upfront, cash guarantee from the convention just for showing up. You figure a guy like Norman Reedus, he probably gets around $200,000 right off the top just for showing up, and then probably makes another $200,000 to $300,000 off of nonstop autographs and photo ops. Yes, $200,000 to $300,000. I mean, sure, these folks, they do work their butts off, but man, I tell you, if I had the opportunity, I'd be all over the convention circuit as a celebrity. You can believe it. I guess it can be good and bad for the fans. I mean, I knew celebrities charge for interactions at these things, but it's just the pricing can make it prohibitive to see everyone you want. I mean, I guess the trade-off is, you're given a centralized location where you can actually meet someone as opposed to, trying to stalk them out, behind the studio door or chase them down at a restaurant or something. But, when I grew up back in the day, I mean, there were celebrities you could run into who would just sign autographs and maybe chat, because they were grateful for their fans. I mean, the fact is, without the fans, these people may not even be working at all. Celebrities used to understand this, so some of them would be grateful to just have fans to interact with. I mean, these days, you could pay upwards of like $40 to $60 for an autograph. They may even charge you for a selfie, if they allow them at all. I mean, similar pricing exists for a professional photo shoot with a celebrity, and those I can actually understand. But, man, I don't know. I mean, when you look at the money these folks bring in from these events, I guess it would be hard to turn it down. But that's one of the things I like about Andrew Lincoln, the guy who plays Rick Grimes on The Walking Dead. He charges typical pricing for autographs and photo ops, but he donates all the proceeds to charity. Now, I would not suggest or expect that of other actors. I just figured he deserved a special mention for it. So, having looked at all of this with eyes wide open, I have a slightly different perspective. When celebrities yell out how much they love their fans, I can't help but think, well, yeah, I mean, I love fans anyway, but if I were making 6 figures for a weekend worth of work, you best believe I'd be in love with my fans. But don't let me blow it off completely. I mean, I get that, it wasn't just some random encounter or small meet and greet at a book signing or anything. A lot of work goes into meeting, autographing, and taking photos with thousands and sometimes tens of thousands of fans. Whew, man. Anyway, I thought Walker Stalker Con was a heck of a lot of fun. It reminded me of the things I used to enjoy about conventions. Back when you could go to one for under $400, maybe $500. These days you're lucky to go for the whole experience for less than $4,000 or $5,000. Well, with the cost being so high, I mean, that's going to keep this sort of thing rare for us, which will likely keep them interesting. We'll definitely go back, but maybe next time I'll just get a press pass or something, and then I could do it upright. Bring you guys some interviews or something. Oh, and I did want to mention, I love Walker Stalker Con's policy for military, police, and first responders. They all get a free general admission ticket, just for showing an ID, and military dependents also get in for free. As they say, we've never turned away someone who serves, and I just thought that was cool. But with that, I'll bring this Halloween edition of Dawn on the Air to a close. Thank you for joining me. I'll be here again next week, Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on KLRNRadio.com. And you can even stream the show or listen at your convenience on Spreaker, iTunes, and even iHeartRadio.com. Just search for Dawn on the Air. As always, you can reach me at Dawn on the Air on Twitter or by email, dawnontheair@KLRNRadio.com. But until next time, just remember, well, tomorrow's Halloween. Don't let the real-world terrors keep you from enjoying an evening out with friends or family, if you're so inclined. It's like anything else. Just be mindful of your surroundings. You can't allow the actions of a few crazies to control your life. Go out, be vigilant, but have fun. Oh, and I don't charge for autographs, in case you wanted one. Just saying.